Under Section 13.4, subsection 4, subsection 5, and subsection 6, a registered firm must provide disclosure about conflicts in all cases where prescribed by securities legislation or SRO rules applicable to it. Regulators stress, however, that disclosure alone is not sufficient to address a material conflict of interest in the best interest of clients. Not only does disclosure sometimes fail to mitigate the risks related to conflicts of interest, but in some instances, disclosure of conflicts may aggravate the potential risks to a client's interests. Regulators expect that clients will use disclosure about material conflicts of interest to help inform their decision when evaluating the registrant's business practices, conflicts management, and overall performance on an ongoing basis. As a result, the disclosure that clients receive is critical to their ability to make an informed decision about how to manage and evaluate their relationship with the registrant. Disclosure regarding material conflicts of interest must therefore be fulsome in content as set out in NI 31-103, must be prominent, specific, and written in plain language, and must be disclosed at the appropriate time in order to be meaningful to the client. When disclosure is appropriate, registered firms should ensure that their clients are adequately informed about material conflicts of interest that may affect the products and services provided to them. Timing of disclosure. If a reasonable client would expect to be informed of a material conflict of interest, a registered firm must disclose that conflict during the account opening process. If a conflict was not identified prior to account opening, that conflict must be disclosed in a timely manner after it has been identified. These timing requirements are designed to give clients a reasonable amount of time to assess the conflict before making an investment decision. If a conflict has been identified and it has not yet been disclosed to clients, regulators would not consider the disclosure timely if that disclosure only occurs after a related trade has been completed. Similarly, if there has been a significant change in respect of conflicts disclosure previously provided to a client, the registered firm must notify the client of that significant change in compliance with subsection 14.2, subsection 4. Although subsection 13.47 does not require registered firms to remind clients of conflicts disclosure that has already been provided to them, registrants should consider their obligation to deal fairly, honestly, and in good faith with clients in the case of a transaction that presents a conflict which was disclosed a long time ago. For example, if the registrant provided disclosure of the conflict of interest to the client with the client's account opening documentation months or years earlier, regulators expect that a registered representative would also disclose the transaction-related conflict to the client shortly before the transaction or at the time the transaction is recommended. However, there is no requirement in subsection 13.47 that such reminders be provided to the client in writing. When disclosure is not appropriate. Disclosure may not be appropriate if a conflict of interest involves confidential or commercially sensitive information, or the information amounts to inside information under insider trading provisions in securities legislation. In these situations, registered firms will need to assess whether there are other methods to adequately address the conflict of interest. If not, the firm may have to decline to provide the service to avoid the conflict of interest. Registered firms should also have specific procedures for responding to conflicts of interest that involve inside information and for complying with insider trading provisions. How to disclose a conflict of interest. Disclosure about a material conflict of interest should not be generic disclosure, should not give partial disclosure that could mislead their clients, or obscure the conflicts of interest in overly detailed disclosure or buried in the middle of a large disclosure document. In order to help make conflicts disclosure more prominent, firms should consider using a standalone and succinct conflicts disclosure document.